Hello and welcome to the Ice Guys. This is the show that takes you into the world of the National Hockey League. Every game, every day, from a betting perspective. With pro sports handicappers Ian Cameron, Alex P. Smith, and various guests from the world of hockey and sports betting. And now, here's your host, Ian Cameron.
Welcome to the Ice Guys, a Beantown Friday edition of the show for Friday, April 19th, presented by Boston Hemp Inc. And this is your Ice Guys NHL Stanley Cup Playoffs betting preview show. Ian Cameron, Alex B. Smith, and we have set up ourselves a players' roundtable of sorts, if you will, here to help us get you ready for the Stanley Cup playoffs starting on Saturday. We have Danny DeKaiser joining us, Luke Adam joining us as well. Happy to have them with us. Two guys that know a thing or two about playing in the National Hockey League. Eddie Lack will be jumping in momentarily as well. Maybe even Jimmy Murphy as well, who is usually with us on Fridays. So it is a packed show. Alex, I know you're excited for the playoffs. I can't wait for tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, looking forward to it. Like I said, it's been kind of a grind and down the stretch, and saw the wild card races, how exciting those were. So now we got 16 teams left. We'll see who's going to whittle it down over the next 8 to 9 weeks and hoist Lord Stanley's Cup.
Danny, I know you bleed Detroit Red Wings still, even in retirement now. Very heartbreaking to see how the season ended for them. They did all they could. They did the part they needed to do in order to get into the playoffs. They just didn't get the help they needed. And unfortunately, the absence of Dylan Larkin for those games where they just could not win without him, that stretch really did end up coming back to haunt them. But a valiant effort from the Detroit Red Wings. You can talk about that. How are you doing? And I'm sure you're ready like all of us for the playoffs.
Yeah, no, definitely looking forward to it. I mean, there's nothing better than the first round of playoffs where you got 4 or 5, whatever, 6 games on 7 o'clock to 10:30, whatever it is usually. So it's always exciting. It's good to be back in playoff mode. Unfortunate for the Wings, but kind of like you mentioned down the stretch there, they were just a little. They had chances, they played Washington twice in like the last 2 weeks. And Washington took 3 of those 4 points. And then, you mentioned the 7-game or 8-game losing streak they had before that about a month ago. And they were a team that they were 8 points, I believe, into that wild card spot, sometime in, I think, early March. And then the wheels kind of started to fall off, Larkin injury. And, they started to play well towards the end again, but when you leave it up to chance like that at the last game, things like that happen. So that's the way it went for them. But see what they do in the offseason.
Now, Danny DeKaiser's a Michigan man, loves his Detroit sports, but so does Luke Adam, even though he's a Newfoundlander. He's a big Detroit sports fan, loves the Detroit team. So you guys got that in common here. Luke, welcome back. I know we did the Players Suite last year, interview with you. Good to have you back, and you're enjoying the offseason in Arizona, the desert. How are things?
Yeah, everything's great over here. It's nice. This time of year is the best time to be in Arizona. I actually had shoulder surgery 2 months ago, so I ended my season a little early in Europe, and I'm recovering from that, but feeling good, and nice to start getting some action back, and been able to watch a lot of basketball, a lot of baseball, a lot of hockey, doing a lot more gambling this time of year than in past years, just because I've been sitting around on the couch recovering. So, it's been good though, being able to watch different sports, and now baseball's starting up too. So it's a great time of year.
No doubt. Of course, Danny and Luke betting with a little help from their friends, aka me. They do get the emails every day. I'm sure that aids in the process. And like I say, I try to lead them to the pathway to profits, but sometimes I do lead them into the ditch. It does happen every now and then, if on the bad days. But we try to help everyone out on this show, and it's been a fun regular season, by the way. And just briefly on last night, so we can get into the good stuff, we cashed the bargain bin special of the night. Why not? It's been a magical year with the bargain bin special of the night, which again, for Luke and Danny, just to remind them, it's a player prop of plus 300 or better that we give out with the bargain bin special of the night segment. And we had Mackenzie Weegar for the Calgary Flames last night, plus 370 to score a goal. He wanted to get that number 20 goal. 20 goals for a defenseman is a big milestone mark. It doesn't happen very often. And they showed on the screen last night on the broadcast what scoring that goal put him up with the company that he had. The company he was keeping was incredible. So to get 20 goals from Mackenzie Weegar, well done. Nice to cash that at plus 370 with the bargain bin special last night. Let's get into our playoff preview because we've got 8 series to preview. We want to keep a brisk pace here. We will begin with the first series to start Saturday, 5 p.m. Eastern Conference first round, New York Islanders, Carolina Hurricanes. Carolina minus 420 series favorite here over the New York Islanders. And, I'm going to be brief so we can let the guests and Alex speak on these. I think Carolina is going to win this series simply because I think they're the better team and they're better than they were last year, especially offensively. I think the addition of Jake Gensel matters. It matters to the power play. It matters to their 5-on-5 offense. You look at how it lengthens their lineup, and all of a sudden, you can bring in a Martinook down on the third line, and now all of a sudden it opens things up for everybody. You've got Aho, and remember last year too, Svechnikov, the absence of him. He's back. He's ready to go for this first round series. It's just a deeper forward group. And that was really the problem with Carolina last year in the playoffs, is that you just did not see enough offense from them at critical times, especially in that sweep against the Florida Panthers. Sweep in terms of 4-0, but every game was close. Every game was there to be won. But just far too many times Carolina's offense let them down. The power play let them down. They're probably more suited to have success scoring those timely goals in the playoffs when things are tighter checking, now with a deeper forward group and the addition of Jake Gensel, who is a proven playoff performer, by the way. We remember how he played in Pittsburgh. He always showed up, scored big goals, produced in the playoffs. It wouldn't surprise me if it's more of the same from them here. 1 through 6, their blue line is as good as any team in the NHL. My only question for Carolina is the goaltending. Anderson, can he hold up? The playoffs have been kind of up and down for him. He was great down the stretch. Can he play well in the playoffs? And even if he doesn't, you've got the young kid, Pyotr Kochetkov, who's very capable. I know the Islanders were red hot, and that does scare me. The red hot team into the playoffs, how dangerous they can be. But outside of Palmieri, Nelson, and Horvat, there's been trouble getting a secondary offense from the Islanders. I don't think they're as good defensively as they've been in the past. Their goals against numbers per game are up this year. They're not defending quite at that level. Their penalty kill's been bad. One of the worst penalty kills in the NHL, which was total opposite of the way it was for the Islanders under Barry Trotz. And Semyon Varlamov, red hot down the stretch, going to be their number one goalie. But now the playoffs here, can he sustain that level of play and snatching the net away from Ilya Sorokin because he was playing so well? Patrick Waugh down the stretch. I mean, tremendous run by the Islanders to get in, but I do think the Carolina Hurricanes do survive and advance here in this series. Alex, we'll start with you. Islanders, Canes.
Yeah, I like Carolina to win in this series, but I'm playing this a little differently. And we kind of joked about on the episode a couple of days ago what we did last year. We were taking the exact series outcome with a kind of bit of a zigzag pattern. That's not the case what I'm doing this time. I like the Isles to get at least the 2 of the first 3 wins. I think Carolina actually wins game 1, but I think the Isles could get another win at home and find a way to actually get the win in game 3. So the way I'm playing this is series correct score after 3 games. I have Isles 2-1 plus 250. But I'm also playing the exact series outcome of Carolina to win game 1, Isles to win games 2 and 3, and then Carolina to win 4, 5, and 6. So that also would give us a setup to where Isles up 2-1, we can go and bet Carolina at plus money to win the series, which will be a larger add-on down the stretch. So that's kind of the script I have for this series, not betting anything just completely outright to start off. I think we can see the Isles kind of hang around early in this series, and then Carolina, like you said, with the goaltending, with the improved offense, they'll be able to kind of take care of things late.
Absolutely. That's a good approach. And I don't think this is going to be a runaway. This is not, for me, necessarily a 4-5 gamer for the Carolina Hurricanes. I think they will get pushed, by the New York Islanders, who have that way of doing that. But I don't even think the over 5.5 games look in this series isn't a bad option. I could see this actually getting to 6, because that's what I want to have in mind here. Carolina and 6, that type of outcome here in this series. Danny, what do you think here in this one, Islanders Hurricanes?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're on point with 6 games. I don't know if it goes 7, but I think it goes past 5. You look at the Islanders, and they're somewhat set up for playoff hockey if they can kind of figure out some things like that penalty kill, and we'll see how their goaltending is. But Varlamov, if he's in there, he's a good goalie. And then you look at the Hurricanes lineup this year, you kind of touched on it. They have a lot more depth. Gensel added their top line. I'm looking at their lines right now. Kuznetsov down on the fourth line. And then that second line of Kotkaniemi, Nikas, and Teravainen. In the past, I feel like Carolina, when they've struggled to score, it's been in the playoffs and in some of those games where it's just tight games. It's 1-0, 2-1 games, and they're all over the other teams, but they're just finding ways not to score. So that's kind of been their MO the last few years. You add in Burns on the back end, and Orlov as well. So that adds some more firepower on the back end. I do like the Hurricanes, and I think 6 games is a good bet. But I think these games are going to be closer than a lot of people think, just because the Islanders play that kind of boring defensive style of hockey some nights, and going into the playoffs, I think that's probably how it's going to start here. I'd also take a look at some of the unders in these games as well as, I think it could be some close, low scoring games.
I think it could be, but I'm also kind of thinking as well that the Islanders, you look at their defense, it's not nearly as good. Their PK's bottom, of the league, and Carolina, a better offensive team than they were last year. If this series ever gets to a point, maybe I don't know if I love taking an over in game 1. I could see game 1 being a little bit, low scoring, cagey, both teams kind of just gliding their way into the series a little bit. But if we ever get a 5, if game 1's like a 2-1, 3-1 type of game, and the total falls to 5 in game 2, I'd be looking maybe at an over at a 5, because I do think we will see maybe 1 or 2 at least overs in this series, because I think the Islanders aren't as good defensively as they've been, say, last year, 2 years, 3 years ago. And I think Carolina's going to have those better game-breaking ability offensively this year with Gensel and improved power play and that weaker Islander penalty kill. And plus there's still some questions about Freddie Anderson and net in terms of playoff performance. He was amazing down the stretch, but bringing that same performance in the playoffs has been a bit of an issue for him. Luke, what are you thinking here in this series?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on board with everyone as far as Carolina. I think it's going to be quick. I don't know. It's just one of those series, goal differential. Like I was looking at it last night, Carolina plus 63 this year, Islanders minus 17, 80 goal differential between the two teams. I have them in 5. I actually took under 5.5 at plus 120 in a series bet, just because I think it's going to go 5. I mean, Islanders are playing well, but I just think the depth, like you guys talked about, the depth of the Carolina Hurricanes, they got so much. I just feel like so much more to roll over at them, essentially in the playoffs. And you look at a team like Vegas last year. Just the depth they had, and I see that a lot of that in Carolina, and I feel like they're ready to make that next step. I mean, Carolina is my team going in for this year for sure, I think. And I took a couple other little ones like Nelson plus 300 to score 3 goals in the series. I like that because I think if their Islanders are going to do well, he's going to be the guy. Jarvis plus 225 to score 3 goals in the series. I think he's going to be a big part of Carolina's offense. But I mean, Anderson, like you said, if he holds up, I think Carolina's got a great shot at going all the way this year. I think he was like 13-2 this year, but health is obviously an issue. And yeah, I really like Carolina in this series, and going forward.
Yeah, it should be an interesting series still, because of the fact the New York Islanders were so good down the stretch. Can that carry over? Can they be like a Florida where they basically run that great end of the regular season into success here in the playoffs? That's going to be the fascinating development. As far as most goals in the series, look, Aho, Horvat, Gensel are your 3 favorites. Sebastian Aho, that's the Carolina Sebastian Aho, by the way, plus 450. That's not the Islander Sebastian Aho. That's the favorite. Right. Just want to make sure everyone's aware of that. But plus 450 for Carolina's Sebastian Aho. Bo Horvat plus 600. Jake Gensel plus 600. Brock Nelson plus 650. Then the value starts to show up, in my opinion. Kyle Palmieri plus 750. Even if the Islanders lose this series, I could see him scoring a bulk of their goals just because of how red hot he's been. But the one I'm liking here, and we go down the lineup, are 2 for Carolina. Marty Necas 12-1 and Seth Jarvis plus 750. Those are the 2 guys I think go down the board a little bit. I'm never looking to bet the favorite when it comes to these most goals in the series props. I'm looking for a little value. And I would say Jarvis, Necas, Palmieri, you can get all of them at Bet365 at plus 750 or better. I sprinkled on all three of those guys here in this series, the most goals, Natchez, Palmieri, and Jarvis.
Now, question with that, because there's some shops like BetMGM where you can bet most goals for either team and most goals for series. Are you dabbling in both of those?
This is just most goals in the series, period.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not for team specific. Yeah, there are those options. You're not going to get as good of a price,
Of course. Yeah.
If you go with most goals for that team in the series. But yeah, these are all for just most goals, period, in the series for either team. Jarvis, Natchez for Carolina, Palmieri for the Islanders. All right, the next series, Toronto Maple Leafs and Boston Bruins. We've got the Bruins minus 125 series favorites here in this game. If you're going to be betting this series based on history and reputation and pedigree and all that, you could only bet Boston here. No question. Boston has beaten Toronto in the Stanley Cup playoffs in 3 series over the last decade. But before you start thinking, well, Boston destroys this team repeatedly and owns this team and runs through them roughshod, I'd want to point out that each series was a 7-game series that the Boston Bruins beat Toronto. It's not like they were just dominating them start to finish and swept them 3 times or beat them in 5 games 3 times. No, these were tough series. These were competitive series that with a bounce the other way, with some better goaltending, with some, not turning it over at a bad time, the puck, key goals at the right time. It could have went to Toronto any of those 3 series against the Boston Bruins. And I know people will make the claim too that another reason why Boston owns Toronto is the regular season history this year, where Boston swept Toronto in the regular season. There's no question about that. I keep looking at this, though, where everyone's going to talk about the Leafs' flaws and the Leafs' weak, fragile mentality. What about Boston's struggles? Boston's weak, fragile mentality stemming back from last year when they absolutely coughed up a fucking lung against the Florida Panthers, up 3-1 in that series last year. The Boston offense was suspect down the stretch. There's a great comment from Terry Ray Vegas in our chat. I agree. And I think when you look at them and the way they finished the season, not great. And Toronto didn't either. But I think when you look at this matchup for Toronto, they've had so much pain, so many painful, bad lessons. Is this a time for the Leafs and Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner? They've got to show out here. They've been criticized for not producing enough in the playoffs in the past. We'll see if they can get the job done here in this time around. The pressure's on them, because William Nylander, he's actually been someone that has shown up for the Leafs, even in some of these losses. He's been good in the playoffs. It's Matthews and Marner that have to deliver more for this team. You look at their construction. I think a big problem, you guys, with them is they've been pushed around physically in years past. I don't think that's going to happen as much. Where you've got now Simone Benoit on the blue line. You've got Joel Edmondson on the blue line, Ilya Lyubushkin, Jake McCabe, who, by the way, will put any part of his body in front of the puck at this point. It's insane what he's doing, the sacrifice to block shots for this team. They all thump the opposing team from a physicality and a hits perspective. They've got Revo. And look, say what you will about Ryan Reeves. You think the only thing he can do is fight. The only thing he can do is hit. The only thing he can do is that part of the game. But he did score a couple goals down the stretch. And I thought he wasn't a liability defensively where he's been that at times in the past. I think he's worked at that, just don't be a detriment away from the puck for this Toronto team. And I think he improved in that regard a little bit, to the point where I think Sheldon Keefe says, we can feel relatively comfortable giving Ryan Reeves a regular shift on the 4th line, here in this series moving forward for Toronto. So I like that they've got way more physical pushback. And I like that they've got in this series a Max Domi who will, grind, score tougher goals, and especially Tyler Bertuzzi, who had a great second half of the season, red hot down the stretch, scoring the goals that Toronto needs in the playoffs and hasn't had enough of, right? Those blue paint goals, those goal crease goals, those going to the front of the net, taking a fucking ass kicking and still finding a way to score goals. Those type of goals Toronto has been missing. And Tyler Bertuzzi, I think, gives them that element that they will be able to capitalize on. So I will get into it more with the individual game tomorrow, but I think Toronto is live in game 1, in my opinion. Great quote from Sheldon Keefe, by the way, speaking of why I think Toronto might take game 1. Do you know what he said after the Tampa game, Thursday night or Wednesday night, their final game? He said, "This is the first time in my coaching career where during the intermission, I was watching video of our first round opponent. That's what he said. He was watching Boston Bruins video packages in the intermissions of the Toronto-Tampa Bay game the other night, already prepping for the Bruins series. I'm not saying that Jim Montgomery's not doing the same thing, but he basically came out and said it. We're already on the fast track to getting ready for Boston, which probably explains why the Leafs were so dead, the other night against Tampa Bay. They're already thinking Boston. They already have their eyes on game one. I think they could take game one, and I'm going to lean to the Leafs in the series. It's hard because we know the history of, just failure with this franchise going back to 1967 and one playoff series win in the last 20 years. But I think they can do it this time around. So I'm going to say Toronto in 7. What I really like, the bet that I like the most here is find over 5.5 games, over 6.5 games. I even laid like minus 190, which I don't do very often, but I laid over 5.5 games, minus 190. I just felt that should have been higher, and I feel really good about this series going at least 6 games. So over 5.5 games, you get over 6.5 games, a little bit of a plus price here as well, because I think this can go 7 as far as I'm concerned. And you can also look, series total games. You see over 6.5 is plus 190, plus 200. So I've got the bigger bet on over 5.5 games and a little smaller piece of over 6.5 games, because I see this as a 6 or 7 gamer, regardless of who wins it. But I'm going to lean Toronto. I think they're ready. I think they're ready to finally beat Boston in a playoff series. Alex, what do you think here? Leafs, Bruins.
So, yeah, I scattered a bunch of smaller plays on the series outcomes and number of games in the series. I agree with you on that over 5.5. I think this goes 6 or 7 games. So I took a shot with series to go exactly 6 games at plus 200, series to go exactly 7 games plus 200. But I also have a quarter unit each on Bruins to win it 4-2 plus 550, Bruins to win 4-3 plus 425. Leafs to win 4-2 plus 450, and Leafs to win 4-3 plus 500. So pretty much just kind of covering my bases. We get out past game 5. I'm rolling, good either way in that spot. And you can kind of do the same thing like you're talking about. You like Toronto in game 1. I'm seeing at FanDuel and a couple other places. You can get Toronto to win game 1 in the series plus 210. You can get Toronto to win game 1 and Boston to win the series at plus 430. So there's different options where you don't have to be laying a whole lot of juice or even going with small underdogs. You can kind of attack these things and get a little creative and find some even bigger prices on looks that you're already liking.
No question. I'll get to some props for this series in a moment, but we'll get the take from the players in the midst of us here on this show. Danny, what do you think here? Toronto, Boston.
Well, I agree. I think this is a 6 or 7 game series. You mentioned the history with these two teams. But it is a little bit slightly different this year. Those series were a few years back. You mentioned they both went 7 games, but just looking at the Leafs back end, they got Riley, Liljegren, and Brody. We'll see how that kind of shakes out as their puck movers, but they're a little heavier back there this year. They got Lyubushkin, Benoit, McCabe, Joel Edmondson. So, I think in years past they had maybe a few too many puck moving defensemen back there. Kind of who you need them, but you also need a bigger presence as well when it comes to playoff time. And the other thing that I like too is up front they got Bertuzzi and Domi this year. Those are two guys who they're going to be gritty. They're going to score gritty goals. Bertuzzi, a former Bruin, he was just with the Bees a year ago, and we know his game. He plays hard. He battles every night. He's a playoff type of player. I think he had over a point a game last year in that first round series, but it'll be interesting to see, kind of how the Bees come out. But 6 or 7, I lean slightly towards the Leafs in this one. But again, we'll see kind of how that shakes out, and goaltending will be a big thing with this series as well, I think.
It's always, it's like that when you're trying to make a final decision and your hand is about to hit the confirm button and it's like, can I do it? Can I actually hit this button and actually pull the trigger on this? That's what it's always like when you take Toronto in the playoffs. But I remember saying last year, I thought they could finally maybe do it against Tampa Bay and finally at least win a first round series. And they did. At least they don't have that hanging over their head anymore. At least now they know, hey, we've got the first round out of the mix. We don't have to hear about we've never won a playoff series in 20 years. At least they got that first round win last year against Tampa before Florida knocked them out. So maybe that eases their mind a bit. I'll say this, all of my opinions on Toronto, they go to shit if Samsonov does not play well. He had that brutal run, but he got it back. He was tremendous from the All-Star break on. He did have a little bit of a stumble last 2 games, but the whole team was kind of like checked out, ready for the playoffs to begin. They couldn't move up in the standings. I think that influenced their play a little bit. I still think Samsonov can have a good playoffs here. And to be honest with you, it's not like Swayman and Allmark were lights out in the few games down the stretch as well for the Boston Bruins. I definitely like the depth on the blue line more for Boston. There's no question with McAvoy and Grzelcyk, and Brandon Carlo looks like he's going to be good to go for the start of this series. And so I still give the Bruins the edge defensively, but up front I give Toronto an edge, especially if Nick Robertson's going to play well and Bobby McMahon's going to play well, and all these guys that stepped up for them offensively down the stretch. Matthew Nyes, he could be a bit of an X factor. The kid out of Minnesota, University of Minnesota, although he's from Arizona originally. What do you think here, Luke? Toronto and Boston.
Yeah, I think this is the toughest series to pick, kind of like what you guys are saying. I like what Alex said about, I got the same thing sprinkled, like series to end in 6 and series to end in 7. I think it's going to go 6-7. I just like,
and if you just hit one of those, it's profit. So it's
exactly,
a good way to
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, I want Toronto to do so well. I mean, growing up in Newfoundland, most everyone there is a Toronto or a Montreal fan. A lot of my buddies are Toronto fans. They've gone through a lot, so I'd love to see Toronto win. I got it going 7. I still think Boston gets it done at the end. I'm giving them the edge in defense and goalie, essentially, and I think that's what wins in the playoffs is the depth. I'm not sure. You mentioned those young guys that Toronto's got up front. I feel like the Bruins are a little bit more experienced on those bottom, the 3rd, 4th line depth players. So, I mean, I think it's going to be close. I'm rooting for Toronto, but my gut's telling me Boston, but we'll see what happens. And as far as the bets go, I think the best options here, you can pick the series in 6 or 7 or I got some prop bets, Bertuzzi, like Danny mentioned, Domi, those 2 guys, you get some good odds for them just to score goals, 2 or more, 3 or more. So that's where I'm kind of at with this series.
100%. Tyler Bertuzzi, any props you can find over goals in the series, I like. And this is my bargain bin. This is actually my bargain bin special for the preview show. Right here. I'm going to give I was going to save it. I should have, because it adds to the drama. It adds to the expense. But no, this is my bargain bin special of the first round from a prop standpoint. Tyler Bertuzzi, leading goal scorer in the series, plus 2,500. I'm in at that price. 25-1. I was shocked when I saw that kind of a price for someone that look what he did. He played great with Boston last year. In that first round series. He was one of the better forwards for the Bruins in that 7-game series with Florida last year. He is the kind of player that you can usually count on to score those big goals for you. And again, go to those areas you need to in order to score as well. So
I think he's in a 1-year deal too this year.
Yeah, 1-year deal. Exactly. He's got a contract coming up in the off season. He's going to have to negotiate for a new contract. So all the more reason to just, make that cash register sing, if you will, and have a big playoff series here, playoff performance for the Leafs. So again, most goals in the series, Bertuzzi at Bet365 is plus 2,500, 25-1. I think he's live at that price. I really do for the Toronto Maple Leafs in this series, no question. All right, we move on to as we stay in the Eastern Conference, we'll do all 4 East series, then we'll move to the West. This is the series I'm most looking forward to. I can't fucking wait for this. This is going to be amazing. Tampa Bay Lightning, Florida Panthers, the Battle of Florida. Panthers minus 190 series favorites in this one. These 2 teams met a couple years ago in the playoffs. It was a Tampa Bay sweep in 4 straight games over the Panthers, and it was a great series for Alex, who actually bet that series almost perfectly 2 years ago with the Lightning and the Panthers. It's actually the series that got Andrew Brunette fired from the Florida Panthers as well. And that's when they brought in, of course, Paul Maurice to take over in the offseason. Now, I thought they treated Brunette pretty poorly, but you can't say it hasn't worked out well, because Paul Maurice and the Panthers go to the Stanley Cup final, and I think the world of Paul Maurice. One of the best speakers and best press conferences in the league come from Paul Maurice. Outstanding every single time. Just the insight and the depth of info he gives you, which is good for bettors, because we want that before we place our bets. But as far as this series goes, look, respect the hell out of Tampa Bay and everything they've done, right? 3 Stanley Cup finals in a row. The Kucherov, Stamkos, Point, Hedman, Vasilevsky, big five, if you will. You can never count them out. You really can't. I mean, they've got the hearts of champions. They played great down the stretch for the most part. But at the end of the day, there are some holes in this team. I don't know if their blue line depth is as good. Do you trust Nick Perbix? Do you trust Darren Radish? Do you trust some of these depth blue liners for Tampa Bay? And I think Sergachev's absence is hurt. They really do miss him on that back end for Tampa Bay. Some people believe still in the third and the fourth line for Tampa Bay. I'm not totally sure I do still. I still think of Gord, Coleman, and Gaudreau, that great third line that they had a couple years ago. And I don't know if they've got that this year. I like Nick Paul. He is on that third line, and he played great down the stretch for Tampa Bay. But do they have that punch from the bottom six forwards that they've had in the past? I think they're a little more top-heavy than we've seen in years past this year, relied too much on the big guns. And another thing they rely on a bit too much, you guys, is the power play. I find their 5-on-5 game even strength hasn't been great this year. They're really, really too much reliant on the power play. And look, it's an amazing power play, number one in the league. But your 5-on-5 game for Tampa Bay hasn't always been great this year. The one worry I have for Florida, even though I'm picking them in this series to win this series, is that they do get into mischief after the whistle. Extra face wash, extra scrum, extra stick in the groin, extra stick in the back, cross check when after the whistle's blown. That's the kind of shit they get involved with, especially Tkachuk and Cousins, the two troublemakers on that team. If they take that extra penalty, and the refs, they do this in the playoffs, when they see the scrums over and over starting up, and you're going to see a lot of them because these two teams don't like each other. It's going to be a physical, violent series. They're going to take one guy and the perpetrator, throw him in the box, and just give one team the power play. And if Florida gets into that kind of trouble where they lose their discipline a little bit, they take too many penalties, that's where they can lose this series because the Tampa Bay power play is that good. So that's going to be critical. Yes, they're going to push the envelope physically and with the stuff after the whistle, but not to the point where you're in the penalty box too fucking much and hurting your team against a very lethal power play. That's going to be something the Florida Panthers are going to have to avoid here in this series. So I still think Florida, I like their forward depth better. I certainly like their blue line depth better. I really do. I mean, and you look at Forsling and Montour and Ekblad, just your top three alone, it's very difficult to match that. The way Ekman Larson has turned his career around and played in Florida this year as well, much better. And look, Vasilevsky, when he's on his game, he can be the guy that carries Tampa to victory. But his numbers, we've never seen Vasilevsky in a regular season flirt around a 900 save percentage until this year. Like, not the greatest numbers for Vasilevsky. And we saw last year what Bobrovsky can do in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Can he do it again is the question. But not many goalies, if any, were better than Sergei Goalie Bob last year in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So I do like Florida in this series. I'm even a little bit tempted by the -1.5 games on the Florida Panthers to get this done in 6 games or fewer, because I just think, and I'm not abandoning ship, even though Florida showed a little wobble, in the last month or so. I'm not abandoning ship on this group. I think they're just going to be a little bit too much, and their 5-on-5 game is better right now than Tampa Bay. So I got the Panthers. Bust out the Panthers sound to get the job done. Alex, what do you think here? Lightning Panthers, Battle of Florida.
Yeah, I'm liking Florida in this spot too. Like I said, not only is this a chance to, now, like I said, you're the hunted. After being the hunter and making that run all the way to the Cup final last year with the team that wasn't even supposed to virtually make the playoffs, needing every point they could possibly get down the stretch. But now here they are, one of the top teams, a team that I've liked for quite a while to win the East. I do have a ticket for them at 9-1 to win the East. But in this particular series, getting Tampa Bay, knowing how the last series ended against Tampa Bay a couple years ago with that sweep, they definitely want to make it a point to start off hot and strong here in this series. I have Florida in 6 games. I did bet series to go 6 games plus 200. Florida Panthers to win the series 4-2 plus 450. But I have a little bit of insurance going each way. I also have Florida to win series 4-1 at plus 425. If they let Tampa Bay hang around and this thing goes to 7 games, we're talking about playoff experience with Vasilevsky, Stamkos, Point, Kucherov, Hedman. I have Tampa to win the series 4-3 plus 600, which I also have an exact outcome that leads to Florida and Tampa trading games until Tampa winning 6 and 7 at 100-1. So the thing is, Florida's got to take care of business early. You cannot let this team get momentum, get air, because they are proven playoff contenders. The reason why is we saw this team win 3 Prince of Wales trophies in a row. They find ways to win, and Vasilevsky is one of those goaltenders. Yes, he not the same Vasilevsky we've seen coming off of that back surgery. This has been arguably one of his weaker seasons in his career, but he's the guy who can steal you games and steal you series. We talk about that all the time in the playoffs. When you have a goalie on that level, he can change the momentum at any given point. So Florida has to bury this team, take care of business in 5 or 6. If you let this thing get to Game 7, it's more than likely going to be the Bolts getting out of that first round.
That's true. I think the game hard to argue with that if it gets to a Game 7, pressure flips to Florida in a Game 7 scenario if it goes the distance.
And that's the thing. To make these bets now, plus 600, 100 to 1 in these 2 spots, you're not going to get anything close to plus 600 series price or otherwise with Tampa if it's down to 1 game. So you're basically assuring me that I'll be writing Andre Vasilevsky at a plus 600 price if we get to a 7-game to win 1 game. That's something I can't ignore.
Yeah, it's a good strategy. Sound strategy to me. Danny, what do you think here in this one, the Battle of Florida?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think it's going to be a great series. These 2 teams, in the past we've seen some battles, right? But I mean, moving forward, I definitely it's hard. It's a tough series. I think Florida wins the series, but I'm probably going to be sprinkling more bets onto Tampa Bay just because of the value there. They don't have as deep of a team as they've had in the past, but I mean, I do like guys in their bottom 6, like Janot, Nick Paul, Glendening. And then I thought they had a good trade deadline this year, too, that you add Duclair, you add Matt Dumba. So I think their forward group is fine with, you got Hagel up there, and, of course, their big guns as well. On the back end, yeah, they don't have as much depth for sure as they've had in years past. But I think between Hedman, Dumba, Chernak, and then I think you sprinkle Radish in there. Radish just had a good year. I like his game. I think you have 4 defensemen that if you need to go down to 4 and roll 4 for some of these games, you can probably get away with it. It depends on how physical these games are. As you mentioned, it's probably going to be pretty heated, especially in the first couple games. But, something tells me Vasilevsky's going to at least steal a game here somewhere. And, I mean, Bobrovsky's been good. But in years past, this Tampa Bay power play has really eaten him up in some of these games. So it'll be interesting. I think Florida wins the series, but I'm probably gonna go a little heavier betting on the Tampa side because of that value there.
Yeah, it's like I say, you don't get Tampa certainly in the last 5, 6, 7 years, not gotten Tampa Bay plus 170, whether it's a money line price, a series price, anything. Usually in this kind of a price range. It's a rare commodity, that is for sure. Luke, what do you think here, Battle of Florida?
Yeah, Greg, another great series. I think I'm leaning towards the Panthers as well. It's a tough series to bet on just because of, like Danny was just saying, kind of like you expecting Florida to win, but there's not much value there to, really push for it. The best value I really found was like Florida minus 1.5 to maybe win in 6, maybe win. I mean, it's still not great. It's at plus 120, but I mean, that's if I'm going to bake a bet on Florida, I think I'm leaning towards that, just them to kind of win in 6 or 5. Prop bet, I have Kachuk, which is, I think, the best value I get is him to lead the series in goals. So I think at like plus 1,400, kind of like what you were saying couple series ago, just there's not much value in those top guys. Like I think Reinhart was like plus 145 to lead the, and then
look at Kucherov for points plus 140. Like there's no value there.
Yeah, exactly. It's tough, and it's such a tough thing to do. And I just think the playoffs Kachuk had last year. But as far as the series, I got to lean towards Florida. But Vasilevsky, I mean, you got Kucherov. They got such a great power play. If the Panthers get in trouble there in the box, and it's going to be tough for them to hang on with that power play they're dealing with, kind of like how Edmonton was there a couple of years ago and still is really. But I'm leaning towards Florida, but I think it's going to be a great series. They don't never disappoint, those 2 teams.
No doubt. There's as far as a goal prop, leading goal scorer, you mentioned, Luke, that you like Matthew Tkachuk here. which is around 10-1, which is a good price. I like Verhaeghe, 8-1 as well. I think that's a solid look. And then there's a couple for Tampa Bay. I'm going down the board a bit. Nick Paul, 33-1. Again, I would have preferred if Toronto was the opponent because he always, scores a shit ton against Toronto. Maybe not so much he will against Florida, but he was playing well down the stretch and getting his offense rolling big time for Tampa Bay. Nick Paul, 33-1. And I'll throw Anthony Duclair in there at 22-1. He's going to play on the top line. You look at the fact that this was a former team of his, the Florida Panthers. He seemed to have good chemistry playing up there with Cooch and Point. So this is a situation where, if Anthony Duclair is going to get that ice time, 22-1, at that kind of a price, I'm willing to take a small flyer for him to end up being the goal-scoring leader in this series. All right, this is the final Eastern Conference first-round series. Washington Capitals, New York Rangers. Rangers minus 450, series favorites. This is a series where I think the Rangers win, and if they don't, it's a pretty massive disappointment considering the expectations. But there's something about Washington. They've been feisty. They've played above their heads. It's amazing. They got into the playoffs with some of the goal differential numbers and some of the analytical numbers, which don't paint the portrait of a Stanley Cup playoff participant. That is for sure. But somehow they're here, and they've done it with just, timely scoring. They've done it by, buying into defense. Their defensive play down the stretch was good. And let's be honest, they got not just good, they got oftentimes spectacular goaltending from Charlie Lindgren, who unseated Darcy Kemper, as the number one goalie for this team. All you have to do, unfortunately, I hate to bring up these scars and these bad memories for Danny and even Luke as Detroit sports fans, but the Red Wing game that they played against Washington, where, look, Detroit did everything but score in that game. Charlie Lindgren was incredible. Over 40 saves? He almost had a shutout. Patrick Kane got the only goal with like a second left, but too little too late. It ended 2-1 for Washington. He stole the game, essentially, and he's been doing that, for the Washington Capitals down the stretch. He's going to need to play at that level probably against the Rangers, because the thing that does concern me for Washington is, outside of Ovechkin and Strome, and maybe a little bit from Wilson offensively, are you going to get your Sonny Milanos chipping in like they have at times? Are you going to get, Hendrix Lapierre and Connor McMichael, some of these younger players be able to chip in and help out offensively, because they did have trouble scoring goals. They got this playoff spot, wild card spot, in spite of the fact that the offense sputtered, down the stretch. And they won every big game, the Philly game, the Detroit game, down the stretch to get in with defense and goaltending and not much offense. If they fall behind in games against the Rangers here, where are the goals going to come from, especially when you're talking about one of the best goaltenders in the NHL right now at the other end in Igor Shesterkin, who got his game back on track, of course, after the All-Star break. So I like the Rangers to win this series, but I was going to lay the series handicap with the Rangers and say bet it to be a 4-game sweep or in 5, and I lean that way still. But John Massey's been telling me over and over again in our chat, Alex, the Rangers don't make it easy on themselves. For some reason, we think they're going to roll past Pittsburgh remember that year, the first round with Pittsburgh, they're going to roll past this Penguins team. Next thing you know, we're in Game 7. And they're hanging on for dear life in Game 7 to win that series. That wouldn't totally shock me here either. That, yes, the Rangers should beat the Capitals. They're better than the Capitals, but here we are in Game 7 at MSG, a week and a half from now or 2 weeks from now. That's just sometimes what the Rangers do. They make it harder on themselves. So that's why I'm going to stay off pre-series bets here in this one. Alex, what do you think here? Capitals, Rangers.
Yeah, I don't have anything pre-series as well. This is one I'm just going to be kind of taking from a game-by-game basis, a period-by-period basis. I think this will be a fun series to live bet for sure. I think we're going to definitely see those momentum changes back and forth. And like you said, because the Rangers don't make it easy themselves, because the Capitals are a feisty team, definitely one where I'll probably be looking at some overtime. So a good draw series as well. So nothing pre-game, nothing pre-series, I should say rather, but just kind of just going game by game with this. But I think Rangers in 6. If I had to make my predictions, but we're doing brackets and different things of that nature, I do have Rangers advancing, and I think they do it in 6 games. And to say the Rangers win in 6, that still would suggest that they kind of maybe made things a little bit tougher on themselves, because honestly, with the pace that Washington played at, and I said this months ago with this wild card race in the East, I didn't really think that any of those teams were going to have much gas getting into once they got into the playoffs. Washington's just built well enough to where they could hang around and steal a game or two. But if they, if Washington drew Florida, I'd probably have Florida winning in a sweep. I could definitely see where if the Capitals do lose this series, the last game that they play, those elimination games, they're just going to completely run out of gas. So maybe we always talk about the third period overs and elimination games, but I would probably think this would be an under series early. But if the Rangers can get some momentum and find a way to put this one out of reach, then maybe look for some overs late as they look to clinch.
And keep in mind, too, you mentioned the point that if they played Florida, they might get swept. Florida's going to put you through the physical, torture chamber as well with that just relentless physical play of theirs. The Rangers aren't as likely to do that, although you could counter that and say, well, that's what you called up a Matt Rempe for, right, to kind of help you in that department in the Stanley Cup playoffs. We'll see if that does make the Rangers give them a little more backbone, which they always haven't had from a physicality standpoint in the playoffs in the past. Danny, what do you think here, Caps Rangers?
Well, I agree with you guys in saying that, I think the Rangers, I think they win in 5 games. I think some of these games might be a little closer than people think, though. I don't think they're just going to run the Caps out of the building. Charlie Lindgren's been great down the stretch. You mentioned how well he's been playing. On the back end for Washington, they lost Nick Jensen about a week and a half or so ago. Pretty scary hit there along the boards, but outside of Carlson and Verhaeghe there, their top pairing. I mean, I don't like their back end. Certainly not as much as I like the Rangers back end compared to this one. So outside of that first line of Ovechkin, McMichael, Oshie, if that's what they roll with, we'll see if Strome can keep up scoring. He's had a good year. Other than that, I don't think there's a whole lot there. You mentioned Milano. We'll see if those guys can chip in a little bit here and there, but I just think that the depth of the Rangers is just too much. And I like Charlie Lindgren, but I also like goaltending on the Rangers side there too. So I think they win in 5, but I do think some of these games are closer than people think they're going to be.
All right, great stuff. Danny is, by the way, on a countdown clock right now. So what we're going to do is, because we've only got about 6 or 7 more minutes left with him, we're going to run. It's going to become the Danny DeKaiser show instead of the Ice Guys show for the next 5 to 10 minutes or so. We're going to run through the Western Conference Series rapid fire fashion and just get Danny's thoughts. Then, of course, we'll come back around and hear from me, Alex, and Luke about the rest of the series. But Western Conference first round, Danny. Colorado, Winnipeg, -110, even money both sides. This is a fascinating series. Colorado, until last night against an Edmonton team that sat everybody, they weren't playing well down the stretch. They got defensive issues, goaltending concerns from Georgiev. Can they put those behind them and get past the Winnipeg Jets? Danny, what do you think here, Avs Jets?
Well, I think this is going to be a really good series. I like the Jets. I like Connor Hellebuyck coming into this series. I just think he can turn it on when he needs to be, and he's so big and he doesn't need to move a lot to stop pucks. So he's a guy to certainly watch for in this series. I think Winnipeg wins this series. Just based on I think Colorado has struggled a bit down the stretch here, and I still think they have a target on their back. Last year they lost in 7 to Seattle, and then coming into this year, I think they're just one of those teams that opposing teams gear up for. So I'll take Winnipeg here. I'm going to take them in 6 games.
There we go, Danny, liking the Jets in 6. I'll save my thoughts for that series when we get back to it later on. But next one for Danny, Western Conference first round, Nashville Predators, Vancouver Canucks. I want to point out these 2 series start Sunday night. Colorado, Winnipeg, 7 p.m. Eastern, Sunday night, game 1. This series, 10 p.m. Eastern, Sunday night, game 1. Vancouver, -145 series favorite. Nashville, kind of like the Islanders in the East, red hot going into the playoffs. They played just incredible. We know that 18-game consecutive game point streak that they had to get them comfortably into the playoffs. Played great. My concern with Nashville is a little bit of a dip from Saros this year compared to years past, and too much on Forsberg's plate and that line. Can you get Evangelistas and Sherwoods and Tommy Novak and some of these other guys stepping up for Nashville, which they've done at times, but it can't be all Forsberg. Can't be all that. It can't be a one-line team. in the Stanley Cup playoffs and expect to win. Vancouver didn't play great post All-Star break. They played better in the first half of the year, so people are concerned they peaked too early, that maybe they're not ready to win a playoff series against a red-hot Nashville team. So this is a fascinating one to break down. Where do you see it going, Danny? Nashville, Vancouver?
Ultimately, I think Vancouver takes a series. I'll say 6 games, but there is a chance I could see this possibly going to 7. Vancouver's had a good year. Nashville's red hot though too. So coming down the stretch, Nashville, they're just one of those hot teams coming into the first round, and sometimes you never know really with those teams how it's going to shake out. So my pick would be Vancouver in 6. I like Quinn Hughes and Hronek if he's healthy back there on the back end. I just like their depth, especially up front with Vancouver. They got some guys who can really put the puck in the net. JT Miller and Pettersson, some of those guys. So I think they take the series in 6 games.
Don't sleep on Höglander and we'll get to it. Connor Garland, who was outstanding down the stretch for the Vancouver Canucks. He's the smallest guy on the team, but a heck of a big ticker, as Bill Raftery, the great college basketball analyst, would say. Small guy, but big ticker. Get those puppies organized. There we go. I love doing my Bill Raftery impression there. All right, Western Conference first round, Vegas Golden Knights and Dallas Stars. We've got Dallas minus 130 series favorites. This right up there with Battle of Florida for me. Certainly on the West side, one of the series I'm most excited about is a rematch of the Western Conference final last year. Dallas was totally embarrassed in their own building in the closeout game in that series, where they lose 6-0 last year to the Vegas Golden Knights in that final game of the series. They get a chance for redemption. Great series. Vegas, look, not a great regular season, not a great finish to the regular season, but they have that Stanley Cup medal, that Stanley Cup pedigree. But they're going up against a Dallas team, played their best hockey without question in the final few weeks, final month of the season. Great series. Can't wait to watch it. How do you see it going, Danny? Vegas, Dallas.
I think Dallas gets revenge this year. I just think they've been playing so well all year long, and right now they're playing. Even down the stretch to the end of the season, they've been playing well. So I think that helps a lot too. I think Ottinger's been solid all year long. And I like their depth. I mean, you got a great back end there. They had Chris Tanev. You've got Heiskanen. You got a veteran in Ryan Suter to chip in there as well. So I like their back end. And then they just have so much firepower up front. I mean, Duchesne and Dadonov has been solid for them all year, especially Duchesne. He's been a really pleasant surprise. And then, you have yourself Hintz, Robertson, Pavelski.
You haven't even mentioned the biggest factor and player that's blown me away up front. Wyatt Johnston, my guy. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah, he's been great all year. So I just think the firepower there for Dallas is going to be too much. And I think they're going to be licking their chops, getting this Vegas team who has kind of been banged up a little bit, kind of classic Vegas, banged up a little bit throughout the season and whatnot. So we'll see if they can put some things together. Because they could, Vegas is a team who I could see going on a run. Everything has to kind of align right though, and I think this year Dallas is just going to be too much for them.
Yeah, if you don't think they're going to be trotting out Mark Stone there, all of a sudden here he is back on the ice, ready to rock for Game 1 on Monday night in Dallas, you need your head examined. Come on, this is the same bullshit we see from this team every fucking year. He'll be ready to. He'll be in there. Here we go with these salary cap, LTIR machinations ongoing yet again. He'll be ready to go. He'll be good. Of course he will. Of course he will. But man, I'll say this about this series too. If Dallas doesn't win that first game, that's a huge mental block they're going to have to overcome. Yeah. Because that's when that's set up perfectly for them in Game 1. They've got to take advantage of it, in my opinion. All right, Danny, last series, LA Kings, Edmonton Oilers, Edmonton minus 160. Look, I know some people will say third time's the charm, right? This is going to be the year for LA after losing 2 years in a row in the playoffs against Edmonton in the first round. But I got to see it before I believe it. And I think you can make the case you've got to take on Edmonton in the first round with even more questionable goaltending than you had last year and 2 years ago with the Talbot-Riddick combination if you're the LA Kings in this series. So, it's hard for me to go against Edmonton. But that being said, LA has really pushed Edmonton in Game 1 of this series the last few years. 4-3 losses. They lost both games, but one of them went to overtime. It's been not an easy Game 1 for Edmonton. So we'll see how this one goes. But when I look at this situation here for Edmonton, this is a team that's looking to take that final step, and I just did not see enough consistency in LA's game. I saw a team that, they'd score one goal and lose 3-1. And then there'd be games where, look, they actually do score goals, 3 or 4, and then they give up 5 because their defensive play and their goaltending was a little bit shabby and inconsistent and erratic this season more than ever. So, yeah, obviously I'm not laying a series price like this on Edmonton, but for me, it's hard to have utmost confidence and faith in the LA Kings against a team that they just flat out have not matched up well with here in the playoffs. Danny, what do you think here? Kings, Oilers.
Well, I think, my pick would be the Oilers taking the series. I would say 6 games. That's kind of my gut feeling. And I just think this year they're a little different. They added, Henry, they got Corey Perry. So they got a little bit of that veteran presence. I do think, up front there, I think they're fine. I think their back end is pretty good. And it's going to be all about their goaltending this year. So we'll see kind of how that shakes out and, how the goalie battle goes there. But I mean, Edmonton just scores so much where they're going to be able to outscore a lot of their mistakes like usual. But, I think until they have an opponent who really kind of battens down the hatches defensively, I think they're fine in this series, and I'm going to take them in 6 games.
All right, like an Edmonton in 6 games. All right, Danny, awesome stuff. We know you got to run in a minute or so, but we thank you for joining us. Before we let you go, though, best bet, any series, best bet, best pick, whatever you've got, whatever you think you like the most, what would it be?
I'm going to touch on kind of what Alex talked about earlier in that Florida and Tampa series. I'm going to throw something on Tampa in 7 and kind of ride that because I just think Tampa's one of those teams where it's playoff time and they show up. Vasilevsky shows up and their big guns show up. So they're going to ride those guys as hard as they can. And I think it's going to be a longer series than some people think. And we'll go with Tampa in 7 as a good value bet there.
There we go. That's an exact series result. Tampa Bay Lightning in 7 games for a series best bet from Danny DeKaiser here on our Stanley Cup playoff preview show edition of the Ice Guys. Danny, it's been a blast. We're going to try to get you back on during the Stanley Cup playoffs, a couple more times. We'll keep trying to get that cash, make that money here in the Stanley Cup playoffs. I was the one that told Danny, hey, maybe look at Arizona a couple nights ago in that final game against Edmonton. And how did that pay out for you? Pretty good, I hope.
Yeah, that was a good pick. Yeah, for sure. I like that one.
There you go.
Need more of those.
And Alex loved it too. We both made it our best bet.
Yep.
Alex and I on the show. We thought it was just a great spot to back Arizona for sure. Danny, awesome stuff. Congratulations. Good luck on with the career, the real estate career, and your camp. You should talk about that a little bit. Your DeKaiser hockey camp. Good luck with that, teaching the kids.
Yeah. I got some good stuff going there. So working with some of the youth players in the Detroit area. So it's been something fun to be a part of there, and then still doing some fan relations stuff with the Red Wings. So a little bit of a mixed bag of everything, just staying busy. But it's been a good couple of years since being done playing now.
Hey, staying busy and productive is the way to go. It's better than wasting time doing nothing. You got to keep busy. Give you that purpose. Give you that drive.
Keep the brain moving. Challenge yourself with that, right?
100%, no doubt about it. All right, great to have Danny DeKaiser, Double D, as I like to call him. Great stuff. Appreciate it, and we'll see you again hopefully later in the playoffs.
All right, sounds good. Take care, guys.
All right.
See you, bud.
Danny DeKaiser, there he is. All right, Luke, we'll wheel back around. We were at Capitals Rangers. Let's get your thoughts on it. Capitals Rangers.
Yeah, I think Capitals Rangers. I think you got to go with New York, right? Best team in the league this year. Washington. Alex touched on it. Tired, maybe coming in. Such tough stretch going down just to get in. That's mentally that can help, but also probably hurt on a team. New York kind of just waiting there for them. So I'm going with New York. I'm going 5 games. I don't have anything sprinkled really on that series. I just didn't see much there. Zibanejad, I kind of like. I seen him at 10-1 as a top point getter in that series. Bit of value there. I think New York's gonna kind of maybe. This might be the quickest series, I think, but you never know. If Washington sneaks one out, then it can be. There's a few series like that, where the underdog sneaks out a game, and all of a sudden it's a different series. But yeah, I gotta go with New York. I think they're just way better team depth, really good in net. And I don't know if we'll see if the goalie can keep it up in Washington like he has Lilligren there. So I think it's going to be a fun series to watch as far as offense. I'd like to see Ovi do well too. I'm an Ovi guy. It's amazing the career he's had. So you never know. That guy could take over a game too and win them a couple. So I know it'll be another exciting series to watch. But I'm going with New York.
Hard not to bet. Look, he's going to be he's the favorite to have the most points in the series, but it's hard not to look at Breadman, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, 50 points more than the next guy, I think, on his team. It's just one of those things, is he going to run away with it? Similar to Kucherov in Tampa, kind of way ahead and above the top point guy on the team. But yeah, it's hard to overlook that, but there's not much value there. I think it was
plus 140.
Yeah,
in
exactly.
the Tampa series. Yep. So it's hard to look in that direction with it, no question. But for most goals, there are a couple that pique my interest. Lafreniere at 9-1. I know a couple people in the chat have mentioned that. I don't mind to look in that direction necessarily. Lafreniere at 9-1. If I were to go for anyone on Washington, I don't know how many goals as a team they're going to score in this series, especially with their struggles offensively and Shesterkin and net for the Rangers. But if you're going to take a shot on someone just because of his big frame and his ability, especially in the playoffs in the past to score, maybe Tom Wilson, 18.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
If you want to throw one out there for Washington, but I like Lafreniere. Lafreniere is the only one I bet in most goals in the series for this one. Lafreniere around 9-1 here for the New York Rangers for the most goals in this first round series. All right, there we go. Finally, we got the page loaded. There we go. All right, now we switch to the Western Conference. Colorado and Winnipeg, even money -110 both sides here. Danny reiterated here this series what he liked Winnipeg. I agree. I just think when you look at this series coming up here, unless there's this malaise and all of a sudden they can flip a switch and we're suddenly going to see the Colorado defense look better and we're going to see Georgiev suddenly turn into Alexander Brodeur instead of Georgiev here in this series. Unless that happens, guys, I have a hard time having faith in them to keep the puck out of the net right now. I mean, I didn't love what I saw at all. And what I think, too, from the Winnipeg perspective is look at the way this team played with a fully healthy lineup down the stretch when they had Scheifele finally there, Connor finally there, healthy, Ehlers was healthy, Velarde came back, and the Winnipeg Jets finished the season quite strong in the regular season. And I think their offense is better equipped. I see them moving around the power play, the puck on the power play extremely well. They could have Colorado in a bit of a turnstile with that. And, of course, we know Georgiev struggling with confidence. And if he does struggle and Jared Bednar decides to make a switch, with all due respect to Justus Annunen, who is a goalie prospect that could be something in time, he's still very young. He's still very inconsistent at this stage of his career. Would he be able to answer the bell? That ends up being the big question. So, is there always that fear that Colorado, figures it out defensively? Yes. Is there that fear that Alexander Georgiev can wipe away a dreadful finish to the regular season and play better? Yes. But I'm not sure that's going to happen because there's enough of a body of work and there's been so many games played by Georgiev this season that I worry about the workload too, way more games than he's ever played before in his NHL career in a single season. And that could definitely hurt a little bit. I think there's a close series still. It's not going to be a runaway by any stretch of the Winnipeg Jets, for the Winnipeg Jets, especially with the firepower Colorado possesses. But they have the edge in goal with Hellebuck. You could argue that they've been better defensively in their own end compared to Colorado. And yes, I still think Colorado's forward group up front has a bit of an edge, but not the overwhelming edge maybe they would have had last year. Because that third and that fourth line, guys, for Colorado, I don't see them having consistent punch from that group night in and night out. A lot of it is the top six with Rantanen and McKinnon and Lehkonen and now Nichushkin, who got going last night in that game. And Drouin, they rely on that top six so much. And the Jets' top six now with everyone healthy and Gabe Velarde playing at such a high level for them, that's a much tighter gap forwards with Colorado and Winnipeg, certainly than it would be last year or 2 years ago with these two teams. So home ice advantage, too. You're going to see the whiteout in the first 2 games in Winnipeg. So I'm going to roll with the Jets. And this is an official series bet for me on Winnipeg here, minus 110 at this even money price. Alex, Avalanche Jets.
Yeah, now I mentioned this on the show the other day, and I'm glad I did because I got plus 115, which was widely available the first couple of days. But now, like I said, we're seeing the shift in the money coming in on Winnipeg. So I like Winnipeg to still at minus $1.10 is still a bettable option, but move soon because this could go 120, 130. But I also have Winnipeg to win the series exactly 4 games to 2 at plus 600. I also like the series correct score after 3 games, Jets 2-1. Plus 160. Like I said, I just think they're going to be able to dominate at home, and this could be one of those home heavy kind of a series. But Winnipeg will find a way to at least get one in Denver and be able to take care of business in the series. I also have, I'll mention it later in the bargain bin section, I do have a player that I'm looking at for most goals in the series.
It might be the same one I'm thinking of because I'm gonna, and I think it might be the same one that someone in the chat's already mentioned when it comes to that. But yeah, there's some good options here as far as that goes. Luke, what do you think here? Colorado, Winnipeg.
Yeah, I mean, I'm leaning Winnipeg. I had written down here Winnipeg in 7. I think Hellebuck is going to be the difference. I mean, he is, in my opinion,
in fairness to the people in the
arguably
chat,
the
Luke,
best goalie.
in fairness to the people in the chat, Luke, they're right in some aspects. Hellebuck has not always been great in the playoffs. Right. He has not been. And that is a little bit of a fear in the back of my mind in this series because we know Colorado can make a goalie that's not on top of his game look silly. And that does worry me just slightly. But I still would take Hellebuck and his playoff inconsistencies and, not nearly being as good in the playoffs in the regulars. I'll take that in a heartbeat right now over what I'm seeing out of Alexander Georgiev. I still will.
Right. Yeah. I agree. I mean, it's just the experience too. I think the Jets no one really expected them, I don't think, to be as good as they were this year. And they got something going there. I mean, I think that they're going to, and maybe Colorado, I mean, like you said, they're so reliant on those top guys. I mean, McKinnon's amazing. Their biggest option or biggest problem is going to be stopping him. If they could shut him down, I think the Jets are in a really good spot. I'm looking right now on my site here on BetMGM, and I'm still getting the Jets series win at plus 115. So I think that's something that I'm going to be kind of going with as we speak. After hearing your guys' opinions, after hearing kind of just talking about it even more, you can start to like it more and more. And at that number at plus 115, it's kind of hard to turn that down. But yeah, I'm going with the Jets. Can Colorado win? Of course, I think it's going to be a tight series. It might flip either way. It's going to be one of those series, whoever can get out in front early, I think is going to have success going down the stretch. So I'm looking forward to this series, to watching it, especially.
In order, if I had to rank them, top 4 series in order that I'm, as a fan, from an entertainment standpoint, that I'm most excited to watch in order. Well, I'll go from 4 to 1 so we can build suspense. The 4th most excited I am to watch a series would be this one. Colorado, Winnipeg. I'd probably put Toronto, Boston 3. I'd put Vegas, Dallas 2. And obviously my favorite is Battle of Florida, Tampa and Florida. But I think those 4 stand out. And you could probably change the order if you like, but those 4 stand out to me. Battle of Florida, Vegas, Dallas, Toronto, Boston, and Colorado, Winnipeg. Yeah. To me, those are the standout series in this first round, viewing-wise, entertainment-wise. Yeah.
I would maybe flip-flop Toronto, Boston with this series. I'm a little more excited for this series, but I would agree with those 4.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think so. You can flip-flop them. I only rank Toronto, Boston because of the history and the division rivalry. And lots of playoff history with these two teams, and the whole can Toronto finally beat Boston storyline, that kind of stuff. But yeah, those are 4 outstanding series, no doubt about that. Nashville, Vancouver. Vancouver minus 145 series favorites here. Oh, I did want to mention, as far as the leading goal props for Jets and Avs. Big Val Nichushkin, 10-1. Why not? He looked like maybe he's going to heat up with the way he played last night. And you know what he can do in the playoffs. So Val Nichushkin, Big Val, 10-1. Gabe Vilardi, we have to look in that direction. 12-1 for the Winnipeg Jets. That is such a great price. Bet 365. I'd even maybe sprinkle, as far as Winnipeg goes, two guys I would maybe look at. Toffoli, because of his experience, 16-1 in the playoffs. And this one I'm a little bit more fearful of because he's done dick all in the playoffs in the past with Calgary, but he's had a great season here in Winnipeg since he got there from Montreal, and that's Sean Monahan. He's really good, 20-1. I don't hate it. I am worried he's got to step it up in the playoffs, though. That's been an issue for him. All right, Nashville, Vancouver. This one I don't have a series, but I thought I'd be on Nashville because Red Hot live, worried about Vancouver, the way they finished, but I was hoping for a better price than this with Nashville. I don't want to step in front of Vancouver, just only getting plus 125 here with Nashville in this series. I do think with Vancouver getting Demko back, that makes a world of difference. He looks solid in his return. You look at the way Rick Tocchet and the Canucks, after that little speed bump there that they had, struggles and people questioning them, they kind of righted the ship a little bit down the stretch. I'm not laying it with Vancouver either. Not at all. Not interested, because I want to see how they play in this first round series. But I'm not immediately taking Nashville. The more I thought about it, Alex, I'll get your thoughts on it. Sorrow still downturn a little bit in his play this year. I'm not saying he was bad. He wasn't bad. He was solid. He was okay. Yeah. But he's had better years, UC Saros, than we saw this year. And then I think when you look at the forward group, for as incredible as Philip Forsberg is, and he's had an unbelievable season, and Yossi for that matter too. So much of their offense came from those two guys. Forsberg up front, Yossi from the back end. That's not the recipe for success. You got to have your third and fourth line be a difference maker offensively. And outside of Evangelista, Novak, who's going to be that difference maker for Nashville that relied so much, and I mean so much, on Forsberg and that top line with O'Reilly, Auto Parts, and Gus Nyquist, relied on all three of those guys heavily to carry the load offensively, because the one thing you can't be in the Stanley Cup playoffs is a one-line team. Because that teams will shut you down if you're not going to get your second line, your third line, your fourth line stepping up. That is a very real concern that I have with the Predators. I love their blue. I love what the team they built in terms of the winning experience. O'Reilly, Ryan McDonough on the blue line, Luke Shen was a nice addition for them on the blue line, give them a little more physicality. There's no question. But there are enough concerns with Nashville, and to me enough overreaction in the betting markets about Vancouver's slump down the stretch to say, you know what? Pump the brakes on Nashville at this price. I'm off this series pre-series. We might move on an adjusted series price at some point, depending on how it goes. But for now, nothing pre-series. Alex, Nashville, Vancouver.
Yeah, the Predators had a fantastic second half to get to this point, even getting to the playoffs. Kudos to Andrew Burnett and his club for getting here. I think Vancouver is just going to be a little too much now that Demko back, rested and healthy. This team's just a little bit deeper, a little bit faster, and I think they find a way to win in 5 or 6 games. Now, I might take a shot and dabble with Nashville to win game 1, Vancouver to win the series. I'm seeing plus 400 at FanDuel with that. That's something I might dabble around with. Other than that, like I said, anything series-wise, it would be anything something adjusted within the series. But I think Vancouver makes fairly short work of Nashville in this one.
Yeah, no doubt. So it should be interesting to see how it goes. Yeah, Rich H makes a point. I don't give two shits if Lindholm does nothing offensively. And he's been very quiet offensively. He's brought in to be good defensively and win faceoffs and be good on the penalty kill and do all those things. I think Vancouver can rely on other guys for offense. Miller and Besser, Pedersen, the way that Höglander stepped up, the way Connor Garland has stepped up. I don't think it's going to be one of these deals where if Lindholm doesn't produce offensively, he's in big time trouble. Or the team, I should say, is in big time trouble. So, you just need him to be the defensive presence that you acquired when you got him from Calgary. And if he's that, he's still going to help you. What do you think here, Luke? Nashville, Vancouver.
I think this is a tough series. I think just because Nashville's been playing so well in the second half of the season, that cannot go unnoticed. I mean, that to be confident going in, I really do like their back end. The guys you mentioned, Saros and Net. I mean, we know how good a goalie he can be, but Vancouver's done it all year. I am a little worried. Are they tired? You look at Tocchet's known he plays his big guys. I mean, they play big minutes. Miller's been playing that plus 21, 20 minutes every night, really, and that can wear down in the playoffs. Will they be able to do that? I do think this series is going to go 6 or 7. That's just because, I mean, in regular season, Vancouver went 3-0 against them. But can Nashville kind of bounce back from that? As far as bets, I mean, I think this is a series. It's a tough bet to get, but number of shutouts, like I think both goalies are good. I think it's going to be a low scoring series just because I don't know if either team really has that high end firepower. Maybe like I'm looking at it here now, two games that would be a shutout plus 850. I mean, that's, in my opinion, I think this will be a low scoring series. Either team can get those shutouts. You look at both goalies are great goalies, and that can happen. So, that might be something I sprinkle a little bit on, but I think I'm going to go with Nashville just because they've been rolling so well. And I'm worried that Vancouver's kind of overachieved all season, although they have looked very good and Tocchet has them playing great. I think it's going to be a great series. It's going to come right down. I think it's 6 or 7 right to the end. And whatever goalie I think shows up to kind of steal a game or two or get that shutout I was talking about, I think that might be the difference.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think Tocchet wants 3-1, 2-1, 4-1 hockey. No doubt about it. And Vancouver is going to want to play that way. And if this was Nashville in the Barry Trotz days, and when David Poyle was still the GM, then it'd really be an under series. It'd really be looking. Now, Andrew Burnett's Predators, they're trying to get the defenseman in the rush a little bit, play with more pace. So, they'll be looking maybe to play a little bit more of a run and gun style. They don't open it up all the way like crazy,
right?
But they do take more chances than certainly Nashville did back when Trotz was coaching the team many, many years ago. So it's an interesting dynamic, almost like that slow down team versus the team that might try to take a few more risks offensively, bring their defensemen into the rush, join the play, that kind of thing. So it's why it's an interesting chess match series. Yep.
Yeah, you mentioned the experience too, like on Nashville. They brought in some of those guys like that McDonough, Shen, O'Reilly. Those guys know what it takes to win in the playoffs. They know that they're going to have to be good defensively, and I think that maybe they tighten it up a bit. I mean, I love that how well Shen played last year in the playoffs for Toronto. I just remember how good he was. And McDonough, I mean, that's enough said about him. And you got Yossi. I mean, these guys just are going to know how to play. I think they might have gotten away with the running gun, but they know that won't work in the playoffs. That's kind of why I'm leaning towards that side of the kind of pushing it to the under.
There we go. Pushing it to the under as far as the way the series will go. More low-scoring games than not, says Luke Adam here when it comes to Nashville and Vancouver. Connor Garland, clear choice for me to be lead goal scorer in this series. I did sprinkle on that. Now, these are all small bets. I want to point that out. We're not going for the obvious choices, which means these are not guarantees by any stretch of the imagination. We're taking some shots here with these leading goal scorer in the series props that I've mentioned. Bertuzzi and Velarde and some of the others that I've mentioned. Bertuzzi's the one I really, really like the most of any of them. But in this series, I think you can make a case for Garland. I know he's a small guy. You worry he takes a beating in the playoffs. That's going to show up in the second round. That's going to show up in the conference finals if they get that far, Vancouver. That a smaller stature player like Garland takes a beating, and then maybe his play levels off a little bit. But in the first round against Nashville, the way he was producing offensively down the stretch, I'm happy to take a shot at 12-1 for Connor Garland to lead the series in goals in this series. Just overall lead the series in goals. All right, Vegas and Dallas. I can't wait. Western Conference Final rematch. Dallas minus 130. Series favorites here in this one. Look, if you're the Dallas Stars, I love the way you finished the season strong. You got to the number 1 seed in the West, and you got the number 1 seed in the West despite having, games where you were losing teams at home you shouldn't have, and Jake Ottinger wasn't great earlier in the year, and you just had a bad defensive team earlier. Not a bad, but they weren't great at times defensively earlier in the year. But then they bring in Chris Tanev, the big addition at the deadline. Stabilize the blue line, make them tougher to play against, harder to play against, block a shit ton of shots, be better in the defensive zone thanks to Chris Tanev. That helped them quite a bit. And his addition to the blue line means that Miro Heiskanen can stay fresher in the playoffs this year. I don't think they're going to have to run him through a brick wall 30 minutes a game like Peter DeBoer did last year so much in that run to the Western Conference Final. So I think you've got more depth on the blue line. You could do a lot worse than Heiskanen, Lindell, Thomas Harley and Chris Tanev being your top four on that blue line entering the playoffs for the Dallas Stars. And I think when you look at this series, that blue line's better equipped to match when they're all healthy. It's still as good as it gets in the NHL, what Vegas has 1 through 6, even if they haven't always played like it, right? At times. And they've had, some bodies in and out due to injury. But when they're right, that 1 through 6 on the blue line can be as good as anybody, Vegas, when they're right. Talking about, of course, Pietrangelo, Nick Hague, Braden McNabb, Shea Theodore, Martinez, and White Cloud. And Hannafin now, of course, added to the mix. I think Vegas still has a bit of a blue line edge, but Dallas has closed the gap now with Harley's emergence, Heiskanen doing what he does it year in, year out, and now bringing in Tanev as well. I think forwards, you guys, if you're comparing the forward battle in this series, I think you got to give Dallas the edge, because I think when you look at this lineup that the Stars have, we know Robertson, Hintz, Pavelski, Mr. Playoffs, Joe Pavelski. We all know he steps up his game in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And then you've got the second line with Duchesne, Sagan, and Marchment, which had incredible chemistry. And then you've got the two young kids that breathed new life into the old man. And I say that, even though he's not that old, in the captain, Jamie Benn. I mean, Jamie Benn down the stretch, since Peter DeBoer put him with Wyatt Johnston and Logan Stankoven, you look at the way Ben's played. He looks like a 20-year-old again. He's piling up the points. He's smiling. He looks like he's happy playing the game. I mean, it's almost like that's revitalized him. And sometimes with Jamie Benn, it's like that bear. You got to sometimes poke him to wake up, and play well. And I think now putting him with those two young kids, like, it's put an extra spring in and pep in his step. It just has. You can clearly see it the way he's been playing down the stretch, playing with Wyatt and playing with Logan Stankoven. So, and I was on a show with someone else, and they said, well, these guys don't have the heart usually to get to that final step and win a Stanley Cup. Talking about Sagan and Benn, in particular.
I think Ben's built for the playoffs, a player like that.
You could say that. Ben's
underachieved
in the playoff, and there's been playoffs when he hasn't done a whole lot. I get it. Does he have that, win at all costs mentality? But I'm seeing a different Jamie Benn right now. Mm-hmm. And like I said, playing with these young guys has, I think, made a big difference for him. And it wouldn't shock me to see him put that narrative to rest here a little bit. I think if you're Dallas, you got a Vegas team coming into this series that's struggling a bit, that's lost confidence with their goaltending a bit. Adin Hill is not playing like the Adin Hill in that run to the Stanley Cup final last year and winning it all. He has struggled. He's fought the puck. I think he'll be the game one starter, but if he stumbles, does Bruce Cassidy turn to Logan Thompson at some point? So right now you have to give Dallas the edge in net. You have to give Dallas with Ottinger, of course. You have to give Dallas the edge up front. I think Dallas has closed the gap on the blue line, which I still have a little edge to Vegas with the defense, but it's not the big gap that it would have been last year when these two teams played. Because remember last year, Alex, they just drove Heiskanen into the ice with how much they were playing him, and he was worn out, by the end of that Vegas series. But now you've got Tanev there. You've got Harley's emergence. You're not going to be able, you don't have to just wear out Miro Heiskanen, as much anymore on that blue line. So I think it sets up well for Dallas. If I'm Dallas, and if I don't come out storming in game one, at home, this is the team that not only knocked you out in the Western Conference Final, but they embarrassed you in that closeout game, 6-0 in Dallas last year in Game 6. You need to come out storming early on in Game 1. We're going to get into Game 1 specific bets tomorrow on the Saturday show, obviously. But actually, no, this is a Monday, so it'll be on Monday's show. But, you got to come out storming. I think Dallas is in a good spot to take Game 1, remembering what happened last year. And yeah, we know we're going to see Mark Stone. It's not even going to be a shock. He'll be there. He'll probably be in the lineup in Game 1, but it will take him a couple games to get up to speed, and it could throw off the rhythm. And it might take Vegas a lineup with Mark Stone on it, even though he makes their team a lot better, a couple games to get in sync again and play their best, integrating Stone back into the lineup. So I like Dallas in the series, -130, which I've bet. But I've got an even bigger bet here on something else. And we've mentioned this in the past. These FanDuel has them. Most books have them now. The Game 1 and series combo. And I really like that here. Dallas to win in Game 1 and the series. You can get that at +146 right now at FanDuel. Very good price. I think the way this goes, if Dallas is going to win this series, I don't want to say must win in a Game 1, but to me it kind of does feel that way. because you lose game one with the revenge factor of last year, with you playing well coming into game one and being on home ice, and Vegas stumbling down the stretch with question marks in goal, with trying to get everyone healthy. Dallas is the much healthier team coming into this series, top to bottom. If you don't win game one, all those doubts, all the seeds of doubt come rushing in again for the Dallas Stars. Oh, here we go again. Vegas really going to do this to us again? Whereas if you win game one and you do it convincingly, maybe, man, it gives you just that really good feeling to say, you know what? It's time to go on a run, boys. We can do this. It's just that different mindset. Game one is a very important game, in my opinion. As far as game ones in this whole first round, I don't know if there's more of a importance on any one team winning game one than the Dallas Stars on Monday night here against Vegas. Alex, what do you think here? Vegas, Dallas.
Yeah, we have the right in the same kind of lockstep here with that. I have Dallas minus 130, but I also have that Dallas to win game one and Dallas to win series at the same price, plus 146 at FanDuel. It's imperative that you make a statement early in this series at home. Like you said, the scene of the crime where they got knocked out last year. That's important. And I think, like you said, if you create some doubt and uncertainty, if you can light up Aiden Hill in game one and create some uncertainty and doubt where Cassidy has to go back and forth with the goaltenders, this series might actually be over pretty quickly. So I don't have a series prediction as far as like exact number of games or number of games in total. I'm just going with Stars to win it, but I am going with that combo of Stars to win game one and Stars to win series.
Yeah, which I think, because I'm not saying Dallas can't win the series if they lose game one, but I think it gets a whole lot more difficult for them to win the series if they lose game one. Game one is set up perfectly for them on a tee. This team wrecked you last year. They're not as good this year. They've got more questions this year. Plus, they've already won the Stanley Cup. Mm-hmm. You haven't. You should have that friggin' desire, burning desire right off the get-go, opening face-off Monday night. That we want the cup now. They've had it already. So let's see if Dallas has that mindset and brings it on Monday night. Luke, what do you think here? Golden Knights Stars.
Yeah, I like Dallas a lot. I'm going with Dallas for sure. Everything you guys are saying, I totally agree. I think it's just kind of revenge for Dallas. They disappointed, obviously, last year, the way they played great in the playoffs, get to conference finals against Vegas and drop it there. It's obviously a deserving Vegas team. It's kind of funny how Dallas has such a great year, first seed, and they end up getting Vegas, who I also think is just, they're a great team too. But I'm taking Dallas. I mean, I got Dallas winning the West this year. That's my pick out of the West. So I think I just like their team. I think they had that taste last year, similar to Carolina, get to that conference final, disappointed. I just think both those teams, those are my two teams for the Cup this year. So I think both those teams are kind of, you need that motivation, that drive, and they had that taste the last couple of years of, we were almost there, but we needed to get over the hump. And I mean, you mentioned a guy like Jamie Benn. I think he's going to have a great playoffs. I love his game. I always have, a lot of respect to a player, like how he's played his whole career. And playing with those two younger kids, it has revitalized them for sure. And even Sagan's had a good year. I mean, they have the pieces there. Ottinger obviously was amazing last year in the playoffs, so I assume and I expect him to be the same this year. But yeah, I'm taking Dallas in this series. Like Alex said, if they get the first couple of games and they go in and steal one in Vegas in games 3 and 4, that's probably ending around 5 in my opinion.
Yeah, this is a series where I'd absolutely sprinkle on Wyatt Johnston. How can I not? I've been on Wyatt Johnston props all year. How can I not have a piece of Wyatt Johnston leading goal score, or even leading point scorer, even as well? I trust him a whole hell of a lot more in the Stanley Cup playoffs to step up and play well than Jason Robertson, to be quite honest with you. That was not a great playoffs from Jason Robertson. That's why, if you're Dallas, could you imagine if Jason Robertson decides to crank it up a notch this year in the playoffs, and you got him going in addition to what you already got up front with Duchesne?
That would be huge.
Hints.
They got great depth there. Yeah. They got great depth in Dallas, I think. I think they're built to win this year.
No doubt. That's the key. They become damn difficult to stop, especially up front, if Robertson can play up to the level we think he's capable of. The level that, quite honestly, he has not reached in the playoffs, the last couple of years. So that is going to be something big to watch here. And again, for Vegas, they got all-world performances from Jack Eichel and especially Jonathan Marchessault last year. And I don't know, down the stretch, Marchessault, I don't know if it's tired or fatigue or whatever, but seemed to be lacking a little something, late in the regular season. Maybe Marchessault's going to be that big-time playoff performer again, but didn't quite see what he brought to the table last year. Playoffs down the stretch in the regular season. So something to keep an eye on there. Can Marchessault bring it like he did last year for the Vegas Golden Knights? All right, our final series to preview here on our Stanley Cup playoff preview show. Los Angeles Kings, Edmonton Oilers. We've got Edmonton minus 160 series favorites here in this one. I know we talked about it earlier with Danny, and he likes Edmonton. For me, it's I like Edmonton to win the series. Like, I'll take them in all the bracket challenge stuff and pools and all that we're in. And by the way, the Ice Guys bracket challenge is up and available. Make sure we'll promote that in a few moments, but that's available. I'll definitely pick Edmonton in all the bracket stuff, but I'm not laying minus 160. It's just not a good enough price. I don't trust LA simply because they have not matched up well with the Oilers in the playoffs. And I don't know if I love the dynamic of Talbot and Riddick, the two goalies, having to match up with this Oilers team. You could make a case the defensive tandem or the goaltending tandem is worse for LA than last year or 2 years ago when they played Edmonton. And when you look at the Oilers, like, other than a throwaway game against the Avalanche and the Arizona loss, where that game just didn't mean anything to the Oilers emotionally, they were pretty damn good down the stretch. Now, Stuart Skinner, that's going to be the key. Can he play at a high level? He didn't early in the year when Edmonton was awful, which led to the dismissal of Jay Woodcroft. And then Chris Knobloch takes over, and all of a sudden, not only does the team start to play well, but so does Skinner. And all of a sudden, that's when he found his game again. No question about that. LA, it's just too much. You know what LA is? One game, like I said, or I think I said it earlier with Danny when we talked this game, they'll score. They'll actually have an outburst offensively, guys. They'll score 4 or 5, which doesn't always happen for LA. But that'll be the game they give up 5, and they don't win. And then more often than not, they'll give up 2 or 3, but they'll only score 1 and they'll lose. And that's the thing. It's like when they do play great defensively, they don't always get the offense. And then when they do get the offense, sometimes that's the game where, guess what? We'll give up 4 goals on 13 shots with leaky goaltending, and all of a sudden the defense kind of falls asleep and gives up goals like they did to Chicago, in the third period last night. So that's what bothers me about LA. There's just too many instances and too many iterations of their play in games throughout the season where they don't have the offense and the defense going together at the same time. And that is going to have to happen in this series if they're going to beat a team with arguably the best player in the world, one of, in Connor McDavid, not to mention Leon Draisaitl, and a 50-goal scorer in Zach Hyman. You're going to need to really be strong at both ends of the ice. The way I'm thinking in this series is that because Edmonton has won the first each of the last 2 years, and LA, I think, will be chomping at the bit in game 1, because they're fed up of losing to Edmonton. Edmonton's been the demise of the LA Kings 2 years in a row in the first round. I wouldn't put it past LA to steal game 1. I'm not betting LA, but I wouldn't put it past them to steal game 1 this year. But if they do, then I'm getting interested in an adjusted series price on Edmonton. So that's kind of the way I'm going to approach this, is that maybe LA, after losing 2 years in a row, they bring it big time game 1. Edmonton maybe a little resting on their laurels of beating LA 2 years in a row, that maybe LA is just the team with the greater edge in game 1 out of the gate, steal game 1. And if they do that, I might be interested at that point in an adjusted plus price with Edmonton in the series prior to game 2. That's what I'm waiting on. If I don't see it, I don't see it. But pre-series, no bet. But I will pick Edmonton for to win the series and put them in the brackets. Alex, what do you think here, Kings Oilers?
I kind of have that same idea, and I have 2 plays that correlate with that. I'm taking LA to win game 1 and Edmonton to win series plus 390. And I also have a feeling that first game could go to overtime. So I know we'll talk more about it as we do the Daily Show, but I am on the draw, and I'm seeing plus 370 at FanDuel as well. So to grab both of those, I could definitely see Kings making that game tight, finding a way to get the win in OT. but then Edmonton comes back and then get back to rolling, and that's where, like I said, we can go and now hop on an adjusted series price. So that's the way I'm trying to play that out, and we can just try to add a little bit of extra value with that spot.
No doubt. Fuck it. I'll spill the beans too, Alex. You did. I will as well with this. I'm going to be on the draw in game one as well. And in fact, I mentioned it on Jimmy the Bag show early this morning. I'm on with him every Friday. I mentioned that 2 years in a row, guys, game one in this series has been 4-3. Now, 2 years ago, it was in regulation, but it was still a close, tight one-goal game. And last year, it did go to overtime in game one between these two teams. So, yeah, you don't have to wait till Monday's show to hear that when we talk about this game one more in-depth draw in game one for the Kings and the Oilers. It's actually the only draw I've moved on for the game ones as of right now. But we might add another one, maybe two. We'll see, because there's another couple I'm interested in.
And honestly, just as a betting tip, when you have these days in between, if you like a draw, grab it as soon as possible, because more than likely people are going to see these numbers day of game, and that 370 will not be around. 370 will turn to 350, 340, and other books that are at 340 will be possibly below 300. So definitely want to move quicker on some of these draws during the playoffs.
Yeah, no question about that. By the way, what the frig was Chris Knobloch doing last night? What on earth was he doing with Stuart Skinner in that first period last night, putting him in there? So you're going to sit 7 fucking top players out. No McDavid, no Draisaitl, no Nugent Hopkins, no Hyman, no Bouchard. 7 top players and scorers out, but you're not going to sit your number one goalie? And you're going to put him in there knowing Colorado probably needs a feel-good performance after a bad couple of games there. And you just see, that thin, short-handed team just give up chance after chance. And you subject, a number one goalie that you need to have in a good headspace and a good mentality, going into this series, and you subject him to that in the first period. Now, he did come to his senses and took him out after the first period. But my point is, he shouldn't have even been in the damn game at all. He shouldn't have even been in the game at all. Put Pickard in there. Call up Jack Campbell. His mind got screwed up long ago. You don't have to worry about it anymore. Anything but put Stuart Skinner in that game last night against the Colorado Avalanche. I couldn't believe what Chris Knobloch was doing. I never would have done that if I was coaching that team in a million years. I would have given him the night off, just like I gave everyone else the night off. The last thing he needs, Stuart Skinner, a few days before game one, is the fucking red lights to be going in his brain, in his dreams at night when he's sleeping. That's not what he needs just 2 days before the playoffs begin. So, yeah, bad job by Chris Knobloch there. I couldn't believe that he even put Stuart Skinner in there at all in that game last night against Colorado. Luke, what do you think here? LA Edmonton.
I got Edmonton. I think I kind of went back and forth on this series, honestly, but I don't think it's going to go 7 games. I think it's one of those series. If LA is going to win, they're going to have to steal game 1 or 2, go back home and win games 3 and 4, and then try to get another one. Which I just think Edmonton is. They're right there. I mean, I got them going to the conference finals, so I think I like them in this series. As far as betting, I mean, like you said, I looked today; it was minus 200 for series win. So there's not any value there, but I do like you guys mentioned the draw, that type of stuff in game 1, because I do think the series is going to be tight. I just don't think LA will hang around the whole time. I do like Edmonton. Goaltending worries me in Edmonton, but goaltending worries me in LA too. So it's kind of one of those things where, you gotta take the offense at it in Edmonton. I think this could be a pretty high scoring series. Maybe if guys want to look into that, kind of like overs in some games and things like that.
Surprisingly, last year it was more high scoring series with these two teams. Yep.
Right. Yeah. I mean, before the season started this year, I had season cup winning tickets on Edmonton and LA and Carolina and Florida. So those were my 4 preseason Flyers. So they're all still alive, but I'm not too confident on the LA going through, but I think the other 3 teams got a shot. But I'm taking Edmonton here. I think they're just going to get it done.
All right, there we go. Excellent. Well done. Great stuff and by the way, as far as the props for the leading scorer in this series, I mean, this one's more difficult because I don't know if I want to take too many from LA in this series. And for Edmonton, it's hard to go away from, the usual suspects. Hyman's the obvious candidate, but, he's going to be priced like it. So I don't know if the value is going to be great. I mean, I still might bet Hyman because he's not only had this amazing season, 50 goals, but you look at the kind of goals, Alex, he scores. He scores the goals that you need in the playoffs. Take a pounding right in front of the net. Go to the tough areas, be right there in the blue paint. Zach Hyman scores those goals come the Stanley Cup playoffs. So, yeah, even though the value won't be great, it's hard to go away and deviate from Zach Hyman to be lead goal scorer, in my opinion, in this series for the Edmonton Oilers. Great stuff. Awesome Stanley Cup playoff preview show. Shout out to everyone in the chat. Hit the like button. We appreciate it very much. And looking forward to the Stanley Cup playoffs. There's no question about that. One more bet that I want to mention, and this is a special type of bet that you can place under playoff specials. I found this at FanDuel. Playoff specials tab. You can bet certain teams to win at least 2 playoff rounds. At least 2 playoff rounds. And there's one in each conference that I like. My Florida Panthers, plus 162 at FanDuel to win 2 rounds. And the Dallas Stars in the Western Conference to win at least 2 rounds, plus 285 at FanDuel. So I sprinkled on both of those. Florida in the East, Dallas in the West, as far as winning 2 rounds in the Stanley Cup playoffs at FanDuel, by the way.
I have both of those, and I also added Vancouver to win 2 rounds, plus 220 as well. So.
All right, there we go. Good stuff. Hopefully it's great minds think alike when it comes to that. Great stuff. Again, we want to remind everyone, and this is for Luke too, because I remember Luke mentioning that he might be interested in joining us for one of these. There it is. Live betcasts during the Stanley Cup playoffs. 3 of them coming up Monday, April 22nd, which is a free-for-all betcast, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, and then 2 Patreon-exclusive live betcasts during the Stanley Cup playoffs, Thursday, April 25th, Tuesday, April 30th. Both of those also 7 p.m. Eastern. And we already have the schedule for Monday's betcast, April 22nd. It's great. 4 games. We got Leafs Bruins, Canes Islanders, Stars Golden Knights, Kings Oilers. So it's a great Monday night. 4 games. We'll be on for all 4 games Monday night, watching the games, shooting the shit, live betting, throwing back some beers, bar and pub vibe atmosphere with every betcast. A lot of fun. Make some money with our live wagering, hopefully. Can't wait for our Stanley Cup playoff live betcast. So make sure you join us for any of those starting Monday, of course, April 22nd. And, of course, for the Patreon exclusive betcasts, to be a part of those, you must be a Patreon member. Sign up for just $10 per month. Patreon.com/IceGuys. You get our access to our Patreon exclusive live betcasts, our daily sides, totals, and player props posted on the page each and every day, goalie charts, totals charts, and more. Bonus content, plus that access to the Patreon exclusive live betcast. So again, sign up now, $10 per month, patreon.com/IceGuys, and check out the Ice Guys store as well. Get your gear and your merch at iceguys.myspreadshop.com.
Yes, everything is fully in stock right now. The caps, the t-shirts, the hoodies, everything you need, all right now at the Ice Guys store. So grab it today over at iceguys.myspreadshop.com.
All right, we'll wrap up the show in a few moments with our we will have a bargain bin special, even for the playoff preview show. I've already mentioned mine. We'll see if Alex or Luke have a plus 300 or better prop that they like for the playoff for the first round. Bargain bin special and best bet coming up in just a moment, right after we hear from our great sponsors, Boston Hemp Inc. All right, Boston Hemp Inc. Make sure you check them out. 20% off all orders on the website using the promo code IceGuys at bostonhempinc.com. And there's also a special offer that they have on right now. Alex, tell us about it.
That's right. From right now until midnight Sunday to celebrate 420, which is tomorrow, you can get 40% off by using code 420 on any order purchase over at bostonhempinc.com. So that's code 420 today, tomorrow, and Sunday. You get 40% off of your order there. You can't combine that with the Ice Guys code. That's just one simple code, but that's for 3 days only, 420 at bostonhempinc.com.
Yeah. So stay away from the Ice Guys code for the next 24 hours or so. Yeah, use that. Definitely get that 40% off there at bostonhempinc.com. All right, bargain bin special of the night. And this we get creative. This is more, if we're going to look at it, we got to look at series props, series player props, that kind of thing as far as bargain bin special. Alex, we'll start with you. Is there anything from a series long perspective that you found for a bargain bin?
Well, yeah. In fact, I went with the only player prop that I have in the entire postseason. And like I said, you kind of hinted at it. People in the chat hinted at it. It's going on that Winnipeg, Colorado series. I like Gabe Vilardi. I have him with two different things. Most goals in the series, which the highest price I was able to find yesterday, I got plus 1,800 at DraftKings. So definitely shop around for some of these props. You'll see some variants. But I also grabbed, as we mentioned earlier, BetMGM has the option where you can look for most goals scored by each team. So I took a shot with plus 700 at BetMGM too. Gabe Vilardi to have the most goals for the Jets. So that's Gabe Vilardi, most goals for the Jets, plus 700 at MGM. And Gabe Vilardi, most goals in the series, plus 1,800 at DraftKings. That's my bargain bin special for round one.
All right, bargain bin special of the night. Series long props for Alex B. Smith, and I love the Vilardi looks. I think he's going to be a big-time game breaker, difference maker, win or lose for the Winnipeg Jets. I think he will have a good series and a productive one against the Colorado Avalanche. Luke Adam, awesome stuff. Great having you on the show. What did you think? Well, bargain bin special, anything you like?
You got to dig in, like you said, but kind of looking at something like most points in a series or most goals. Like I'm looking at the Edmonton series, and you got Leon at plus 500 to lead the series in goals and then you got Connor and Hyman at plus 400. I just think it's going to be one of those three guys lead the series in goals. I look at a guy like Draisaitl, kind of maybe sleeping throughout not sleeping. He still had 40 or whatever he had, but he didn't get 50 this year like he has in the past. So I kind of like him he might be the guy that steps it up here in the playoffs for Edmonton. And I think plus 500 is a pretty good number for him to lead that first series. I think it's going to come down to one of those three guys. So you take a flyer in any one of those three, and I think you're in a good spot, plus 400 or plus 500.
All right, there we go. Like it for Luke Adam. That is his bargain bin special of the night for this first round series bargain bin, if you will. I'm going to attempt, by the way, to put the link for the Ice Guys Bracket Challenge. There it is on the screen right now. There it is. That's the URL. They've done it in truncated form, and there's the password to Bobano. It's basically on the Ice Guys Twitter X account and mine. You'll see the link there. The password Bobano will get you entered into that Ice Guys Bracket Challenge. So there you go. Check it out.
We'll also post that on patreon.com/iceguys, and that'll be an open post. So even if you don't sign up to the Patreon page, which you should be, but if you're not, you'll still be able to find that link and everything to sign up for the Bracket Challenge.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll make that a public post, of course, on Patreon. All right. Stanley Cup playoff preview betting show, best bets to wrap things up. Alex, what do you like for best bet?
Yeah, as far as this round one goes, I'm rolling with the Florida Panthers to win the series 4-2 over the Tampa Bay Lightning. I think they're going to exact some revenge. They can keep this great season rolling. And like I said, Tampa's a tough team. They battle tested. They've been through so many wars back and forth, and I think they might run out of a little bit of steam here. I think Florida's just got a little bit too much speed. They said they get that cycle going in motion. They can wear anybody in the lead down, and I think they take care of their the big brother from the Sunshine State there. So give me Florida to win the series 4-2 plus 450. That's my best bet for the first round.
There you go. That's Florida by an exact 4-2 in 6 games over the Tampa Bay Lightning. And look, they got swept 2 years ago. And really, since that sweep, they've been the better team, at least in the regular season, you could argue, than Tampa Bay. And especially this year, And look, it doesn't matter, though, if you don't do it in the playoffs head-to-head against them. So Florida's 4-2 in 6 games against Tampa Bay, over Tampa Bay for Alex B. Smith with his best bet for this first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Luke, great job. What do you like for your best bet?
After looking through everything, I think, I do like that Boston and Toronto series to go 6 or 7 games. So I think, that's a pretty good bet. Alex said he had it. I have it too. I kind of have the series that end in 6 and the series that end in 7. If you can bet both and it still be profitable, but I just think that series is definitely going 6 or 7, and I think that's definitely my best bet going forward for this round.
All right, there it is. Boston, Toronto. You could bet this. You could lay the juice over 5.5, or you could go sprinkle in 6 and in 7 at plus money. And if you get one of them, it's going to be profit. So you can take it either way, but that is the best bet for Luke Adam, Boston, Toronto in either 6 or 7 games. My best bet, give me that game 1 and series combo I mentioned. Dallas Stars to win game 1 and the series plus 146 at FanDuel over the Vegas Golden Knights. I think if they win game 1, they win the series. And I think if they lose game 1, they're in some trouble, to be honest with you, Dallas. So it's such a huge game, and I want to combo it up because it's just a better price. Why lay minus 130 when you can take plus 146? So Dallas to win game 1 and the series plus 146 over the Vegas Golden Knights for my best bet here for this Stanley Cup playoff preview show. Awesome stuff. Luke, we know you're getting yourself healthy, of course, back in Arizona for the off season and obviously the rest of the Stanley Cup playoffs. So we'll try to get you back on whenever you want to join us for one of our daily shows, certainly for one of our live bet casts. We'd love for you to join us for a few minutes. It's really like a bar and a pub environment. We're just slamming back here, watching the games, betting live, trying to make money, all kinds of good shit.
Great. Awesome. Well, thanks for having me, guys. It was awesome. This was a lot of fun.
No doubt. We appreciate Luke Adam and, of course, Danny DeKaiser joining us also on the Stanley Cup Playoff Preview Show. Shout out to everyone in the chat. Hit the like button on the way out. A reminder, the Ice Guys is live 7 days a week, Monday to Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern, Saturday and Sunday, noon Eastern. If you can't watch the show live, download the Ice Guys podcast in audio form on all major podcast platforms, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and more. Download the Ice Guys podcast when you can't watch the show live. A reminder, we are back tomorrow, Saturday show at noon Eastern, and we will do the entire Saturday and Sunday Game 1 previews tomorrow. Saturday and Sunday's games will be off on Sunday, no show Sunday, and we'll be back on Monday for our doubleheader daily show and the first playoff betcast on Monday night. For Alex B. Smith, Luke Adam, and Danny DeKaiser, I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great Friday night. Enjoy the Stanley Cup playoffs and good luck. And we will be back tomorrow on Saturday for another edition of the Ice Guys.